Now that we are aware of the three important natural resources, namely air, water and soil, and we know how they have been polluted badly by human beings, let's know a little bit more about them in coordination, how they work together and how the biogeochemical cycles are taking place on our planet and enabling the life. Now, when I say biogeochemical cycles, now we are referring to a term which can be broken down into three parts. Bio means living. Living organisms would be involved. Geo means what is component of earth. Geo refers to earth. Geo word is for earth. And chemical. There would be chemical interactions taking place between living organisms and the geological factors, which would be abiotic factors, and they would be interacting in cyclic pattern. This is what we have to deal with. Now, there are four cycles that we have to deal with, and we have water cycle that you have studied since your childhood. We have a nitrogen cycle, we have a carbon cycle, and in carbon cycle we talk about the greenhouse effect as well, which is responsible for global warming, the term which is heard very widely nowadays, that is responsible for all the abrupt weather conditions. And lastly, we have the oxygen cycle. So, through a journey of these 4-5 slides, you are going to understand the biogeochemical cycles. Pay attention to what comes on the screen and see how it is linked and it is related and how it is responsible for all the living activities in subtlety. Okay, now dynamic and complex, the global water cycle. We have talked about water cycle since the earlier classes. We study that water gets evaporated, it forms the clouds, the rain falls, the rain comes into the water body again, it gets evaporated, and this is so on it goes. So, what we have over here is that we have some living form involved, that is the trees and forests are involved in the water cycle, and we have non-living bodies like lakes and river bodies and oceans, of course, which are responsible for the process of evaporation. So, first of all, pay attention to all the water bodies. We have oceans, we have this small pond, we have these ice caps. All these are the sources or the sites, I would say. They are the site of evaporation which takes place due to the heat of sun. Now, what happens when they get evaporated? They form clouds, the water is stored in the atmosphere, the condensation takes place of this water which was in atmosphere, then the precipitation takes place, and the water bodies, the water that had evaporated, it comes back to the water bodies itself. Okay, so this is the entire concept of global water cycle. Have a look at it. You must have done it many a time, so I am not going to get into depth of this. You have fresh water, you have groundwater storage that ultimately joins the ocean water. That ocean water surface is responsible for evaporation. Evaporation leads to formation of clouds. Clouds get condensed, and then again you have the water evaporated coming back to the same water source or some other water source by the process of precipitation. There is a great deal of contribution done by the process of transpiration that takes place. Okay, that transpiration takes place from forest leaves. Okay, and we have the involvement of living beings as well. Moving further, the next cycle is nitrogen cycle. Nitrogen is very important for all living beings. So, undoubtedly it is going to involve the biological aspect in a greater deal as compared to the water cycle. Why? Because nitrogen is component of nucleic acids, it is component of the proteins which are the building blocks of the cell, and it is component of many other things which are the biomolecular backbone of living beings. So, this nitrogen is present in the atmosphere, and this can be brought into the living form or the living cycle only by the microbes. Now, see this. There is nitrogen, lots and lots of nitrogen present in the atmosphere, almost 70%. It gets fixed into the soil by bacterial fixation. Okay, there is a fixation by lightning, because lightning has a lot of energy, so it breaks down the nitrogen, it forms the nitrates, and they also get fixed into the soil, and we have the organic matter that adds to the nitrogen content of the soil. See, whatever nitrogen is to be taken by the plants, we cannot take nitrogen directly. Whatever nitrogen is available in the soil, that has to be taken by the plants, and then we consume those plants for organic matter. Okay. Now that nitrogen is coming from atmosphere, how it is coming from atmosphere? First is there is lightning fixation, then there is bacterial fixation. Apart from that, there is addition of organic matter that gets decomposed and adds nitrates into the soil. So basically this nitrogen has to come to the soil in the form of nitrites and nitrates, finally in the form of nitrates. When the nitrate is present in the soil, then only the plant would be able to take that nitrogen, and from that plant we would be able to take that nitrogen. This is what the entire concept of nitrogen cycle is all about. Apart from this, we have fossil fuel emissions, where nitrogen is exerted out and it is added back to the atmosphere. How it is taken from the atmosphere? It is in so much abundance that it hardly matters what is the balance. Okay, the consumption is very less, so it would come into the soil, it has to become nitrate basically. So this is the entire process. Either we are going to make them in factories and form fertilizers, they would get converted to ammonium, ammonium would get converted to nitrates again by the agency of microbes. So you see, this nitrogen cycle is actually biogeochemical cycle, where we are using the resources of earth, at the same time there is immense involvement of biological beings in converting the nitrogen, atmospheric nitrogen, into the simple nitrates, I would say. Now we have the next cycle, that is carbon cycle. Carbon cycle is again very simple. We give out carbon dioxide and we just fix the carbon. That we do not fix the carbon, the fixed carbon, that is the fixation done by plants in the form of photosynthesis, is consumed by us. That is the crux of entire biological carbon cycle. See, we have fossil fuels that are made up of carbon. They are living material at some stage of the earth's growth. It's millions of years back, they were also living. They must have consumed carbon. Okay, so they have carbon inside them. When we burn those fossil fuels, they emit carbon dioxide. So by burning of fossil fuels, we add carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. You know, carbon dioxide's composition in the atmosphere is 0.003%. A slight change in that is very much harmful, because that leads to greenhouse effect. We'll come to that. But burning of fossil fuels add carbon dioxide into atmosphere. Remember this point. This is going to be important in understanding greenhouse effect. Then what happens is that whosoever is doing respiration, any living organism, it is burning glucose and giving out carbon dioxide. So we have cellular respiration, that is also adding carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. You see the plants doing respiration, they are adding carbon dioxide. You see these animals doing respiration, they are adding carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. At the same time, the microbes which are breaking down the decomposed matter, they are also adding carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And this entire carbon dioxide that is being added into the atmosphere, that is being taken back by the plants for the process of photosynthesis. They would take up this carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and make glucose, and that glucose we would be consuming, we or other organisms. That is the only source of food on earth, and who acts as the main source, the central point, that is carbon dioxide, which is getting circulated in our earth or in our atmosphere according to this cycle. Now, because we had talked about greenhouse effect, I told you that that emission of a lot of carbon dioxide from the fossil fuels gives rise to a condition that is known as greenhouse effect. Now, what is greenhouse effect? I told you that Earth's atmosphere is like a blanket. Now, what is the purpose of blanket? Blanket's purpose is keeping you safe from cold basically. Same is the purpose of our Earth's atmosphere, and that blanket purpose is being solved due to the presence of carbon dioxide in the air. Had it not been carbon dioxide in the air, our Earth's temperature would have been -20 degrees Celsius, regardless of whether you are on equators, tropics or poles. So Earth's temperature is kept at an average of 15 degrees Celsius annually, just because it is having an atmospheric blanket which is having 0.003% of carbon dioxide. Why? Because whatever sunlight's heat solar insolation comes, the heat that it brings, that is being trapped by gases like carbon dioxide, and it is not given back into the space. This is what happens. Normally what happens when a surface becomes cold, because it becomes cold just because of a single reason, that whatever heat has come, that gets radiated back. Now supposedly you keep something which is trapping that heat, that is known as greenhouse effect. You can take the example of a closed car. Supposedly a car is not parked under shade and it is parked in open. After some time, within 20 or 30 minutes, you would observe that that car is burning like hell. Okay. Now why it is burning? Because greenhouse effect has taken place. Whatever heat was going inside as a result of solar insolation, infrared rays, they were trapped inside by the carbon dioxide, and the car is heated abnormally, which is the temperature is 2 or 3 or 4 degrees Celsius, or you can say 10 degrees Celsius higher than the temperature that lies outside the car. So that is greenhouse effect, and this is what we study. The more is carbon dioxide, the temperature increases, okay, and when the temperature increases, there is a condition known as global warming, which has many and many manifold manifestations on Earth's climate, and we see that abrupt weather changes are because of that global warming only. Some solar insolation is reflected by Earth and atmosphere. Now we are coming to what they are explaining. Some is reflected back. Whatever is being absorbed, it stays on Earth's surface and it warms it up. Whatever heat comes onto you, it warms that surface. When it is warm, then there is what infrared radiation is emitted by Earth's surface. It was supposed to go back as it was reflected by atmosphere. This part is also supposed to reflect that infrared radiation in the form of heat, but this is trapped. And when it is trapped, the temperature of the earth becomes higher. It does not go into the negative values. Some of the infrared radiation passes through the atmosphere, little bit of it. Rest of it, as you can see the surface of earth got heated, and it was the heat that was radiated by the surface, it got trapped inside the atmosphere and earth's temperature increased. Now moving further, the last is the oxygen cycle. Oxygen is almost 21 to 23% of Earth's atmosphere. What you see is that there is this atmosphere, lower atmosphere having lots of oxygen. Let's see what they are telling. Most available oxygen comes from photosynthesis by plants on land. That almost entirely. It is the plants which are giving us the oxygen. There is no other organism which is capable of giving us oxygen. So it is the plant life form, that is phytoplanktons and plants on the ocean surface, which add up oxygen into the atmosphere. Now most oxygen is stored in oxide minerals of the earth's crust. So whenever there is oxidation of these, they are going to give oxygen, but they are mostly unavailable for the use because they are bound in the rocks. Now the oxygen that is present in the oceans in the dissolved form, it is used by animals, plants, bacteria, fire, decomposition, and even in rusting metal, that is known as oxidation. The phytoplanktons which float on the surface of the ocean, they are responsible for adding oxygen into the atmosphere. So whatever oxygen is being added into the atmosphere, that is being done by the plants, and it is being utilized by rest of the animals on this planet. So I hope it is clear to you with the help of these slides that what are the biogeochemical cycles and what the greenhouse effect is all about.